America's motorcycle market is hitting a wall. Sales have fallen double digits since 2022. Dealerships are closing, and even the big names Harley, Indian, Triumph are trimming models to stay alive. The average US rider is now over 60, and younger buyers aren't replacing them. For those of us who've spent decades in the saddle, that feels like watching a part of ourselves fade away. In this video, we'll break down the 7 brands losing traction fastest, why it's happening, and what it means for real riders like you and me. Watch till the end, because you'll find out why Harley-Davidson might not survive another year. Number 7. Royal Enfield. For over a century, Royal Enfield has worn the badge of persistence. The brand built its name on reliability, simplicity, and that unmistakable thump that echoed through British lanes and Indian backroads alike. In the United States, it once offered a gateway to classic motorcycling, a taste of vintage style without the vintage headaches. But as 2026 draws near, that legacy is showing cracks. The very charm that carried Royal Enfield into modern times is now holding it back. Royal Enfield entered the American scene promising affordable heritage. Riders could buy into nostalgia, polished tanks, chrome mirrors, and twin pipes for less than the cost of a mid-range Japanese cruiser. It appealed to older bikers who missed the smell of oil and the honesty of air-cooled metal. Yet, the same simplicity that once made it approachable now limits its reach. The company has improved its engineering, no doubt, but refinement alone can't erase decades of perception that Royal Enfields are slow classics rather than long-haul contenders. In garages across America, the truth is surfacing. Many owners appreciate the styling but admit the ride is better suited for Sunday mornings than cross-country runs. The bikes evoke the past, but struggle to meet present expectations: range, comfort, highway power, and dealer support. In a market dominated by torque, heavy twins, and tech-driven tourers, nostalgia without endurance can only go so far. What hurts most for Royal Enfield isn't just competition, it's identity. The brand tried to grow beyond its vintage image, introducing sportier and adventure-inspired models. Yet the core appeal remains retro, and that limits its market. Riders who grew up on big American V-twins find the Enfield line charming but underwhelming, while younger buyers, raised on performance and gadgets, look elsewhere. It sits between 2 generations of riders and fully satisfies neither. Dealership strength is another problem. Unlike Harley-Davidson or Honda, Royal Enfield lacks a nationwide service backbone. Parts delays, limited inventory, and patchy after-sales support frustrate owners who expect reliability on par with major manufacturers. When word spreads through forums and rally talk, reputation takes a hit fast. And among older American ridersmen who've tuned carburetors in the dark and fixed bikes, roadside trust is everything. Royal Enfield's challenge isn't engineering, it's evolution. They've modernized their machines, improved manufacturing, and built a loyal base overseas. But America demands more. The open highways reward torque, endurance, and comfort. Without a model that truly conquers distance or competes head-on with Japanese and American tourers, the brand risks becoming a novelty rather than a staple. For riders like Mike Dawson, who remember when motorcycles were built to roam, Royal Enfield feels like a reminder of what once was, not what's next. Its history deserves respect, but the clock is ticking. If the company doesn't find a way to marry nostalgia with genuine American performance, it may fade into memory, another great name parked in the Museum of Motorcycling History. The next brand on this list shares a similar fate and icon of craftsmanship that's slowly being forgotten by the very riders who once swore by it. If you've been nodding along so far, it means you care about where real motorcycling is headed. Hit that like button and subscribe, because every day we break down the truths other channels are too afraid to talk about. And sound off in the comments, where do you think the future of riding is going? Number 6. Moto Guzzi. There was a time when the name Moto Guzzi carried the quiet pride of the true individualist. It was the choice of riders who wanted to stand apart from the chrome crowds. A machine that whispered class rather than shouted for attention. Born on the shores of Lake Como over a century ago, the brand built its identity around authenticity and craftsmanship values that once drew respect from American touring riders who knew the difference between flash and soul. But in 2025, that individuality has become a liability. Moto Guzzi's story in America has always been one of admiration from afar and struggle up close. It entered the US market as the elegant alternative to the mainstream, favored by riders who preferred mechanical honesty over marketing. The V-twin across the frame, the shaft drive, and the hand-built feel made it a cult favorite. Yet that same exclusivity that once made the brand special now limits its survival. When parts are scarce, dealers few, and corporate backing uncertain, heritage alone can't carry a company through the storm now hitting the motorcycle industry. In an age where reliability, dealer access, and service infrastructure define a brand's staying power, Moto Guzzi has been left behind. Its American network has thinned to a handful of passionate but struggling dealerships scattered across the country. Those who own the bikes still swear by their charm, but new buyers often walk away after realizing how far they might have to travel for warranty work or replacement components. In a market where convenience often outweighs loyalty, that gap is fatal. The attempt to modernize through limited releases like the V100 Mandello earned critical praise but little market traction. It was a fine motorcycle, but it arrived with the price and expectations of a big tour without the infrastructure to support one. For the average American rider, that equation just doesn't work. For older bikers who lived through the golden decades of touring, Moto Guzzi represents something they respect: craftsmanship, mechanical personality, and endurance. But they also remember when motorcycles were simple to maintain, and parts could be found at a friendly local shop. The modern Guzzi doesn't offer that ease anymore. Even though the brand has improved reliability and quality, its reach remains too narrow. The risk of owning one feels too high, especially to riders who plan to cross state lines, not just neighborhoods. There's a tragedy to this decline because Moto Guzzi never chased trends. It stayed loyal to its character, elegant, mechanical, soulful. But loyalty without adaptation is dangerous in a shrinking market. As younger riders chase technology and older riders demand comfort, Moto Guzzi's quiet charm fades into the background noise of bigger, faster, and easier machines. If nothing changes soon, this century-old brand could become more memory than movement in America. It will still inspire collectors and restorers, still draw nods at vintage meets, but its presence on showroom floors may vanish. Moto Guzzi earned its place in motorcycle history. Sadly, in 2025, it's fighting to keep a place on American highways. The next brand on this list tells a similar story, one that proves even heritage and horsepower can stumble when a company forgets what its riders truly need. We talk about brands falling apart, but the gear that keeps us rolling is still out there. Check the description for what I actually use. Number 5. Triumph motorcycles. There was a time when Triumph stood shoulder to shoulder with the greatest motorcycle names on earth. Born out of Britain's golden mechanical era, it was a brand that carried swagger, precision, and rebellion in equal measure. American riders embraced it because it felt different, lean, responsive, and bold without being loud. From the salt flats to silver screens, Triumph became shorthand for freedom. But in 2025, that freedom feels distant. The name still commands respect, yet its presence in the American market is quietly shrinking. Triumph once defined the spirit of the cafe racer and the desert sled. The Bonneville, Tiger, and Rocket lines became living proof that engineering could have soul. But the modern market is different. The old rebels have aged, and the new generation measures value by horsepower, comfort, and tech integration. Somewhere in trying to appeal to both, Triumph lost its balance. In the United States, the company now faces a problem of scale and relevance. Its dealerships are fewer than ever, many folded into multi-brand showrooms, where the Triumph logo competes for space with flashier names. The brand's identity rooted in heritage no longer guarantees sales when buyers can find faster, cheaper, and more reliable options from Japan or more luxurious cruisers from America. For the rider who still dreams of that classic British hum, the spirit remains, but the convenience does not. Triumph's leadership tried to modernize, yet in doing so, they risked the very essence that made the brand beloved. The simple, tactile connection between man and machine gave way to touchscreens and ride modes. To older riders, that felt less like evolution and more like surrender. It's not that the bikes became bad, they became unfamiliar. And for many, that loss of identity is worse than any mechanical flaw. The economic pressure on Triumph is real. Manufacturing costs in the United Kingdom continue to climb, and exporting to America grows more expensive each year. As profits tighten, marketing budgets shrink, making the brand even less visible to the riders who once kept it alive. The machines are still beautifully built, but beauty doesn't pay the bills when dealerships struggle to move inventory. For veterans of the road, Triumph will always represent a chapter in motorcycling history worth respecting. It's a brand that carried class without arrogance and performance without gimmicks. But the American market doesn't reward sentiment, it rewards survival. Without a clear path to recapture the trust of older riders or inspire the next wave, Triumph's position is fragile. If the company doesn't find a way to remind riders why its name once defined cool, it risks becoming exactly what no rider wants to see: a legend gathering dust in the corner of a dealership, admired but unsold. Number 4. Suzuki. For decades, Suzuki was the unsung workhorse of the motorcycle world. It didn't boast, it didn't overpromise, it just delivered. Every garage had at least one Suzuki that never quit. The kind of bike that could take punishment, survive neglect, and still fire up with a twist of the key. It was the trusted companion of riders who didn't need flash to prove their worth. But as the American motorcycle market tightens in 2025, Suzuki's dependable image is starting to feel like a memory. What once symbolized value and grit now risks fading into quiet irrelevance. Suzuki earned its reputation the hard way. From the GS Tourers and Intruder Cruisers to the Hayabusa that became a legend in its own right, the company built motorcycles that matched performance with reliability. For generations, it gave riders something they could count on: machines that worked as hard as the men who rode them. But in recent years, the brand's voice has gone faint. New models arrive without fanfare, and dealerships across the country whisper the same concern. Suzuki's spark has dimmed. The problem isn't engineering. Suzuki still builds quality machines. The problem is identity. Once the rebel that challenged the giants, Suzuki now feels lost in its own lineup. The touring segment has gone quiet, the cruisers have vanished, and the company's attempts to modernize feel half-hearted. Riders who grew up respecting the brand's toughness are left wondering what happened to the Suzuki that once fought for every inch of the road. It isn't that the bikes have failed, it's that the company has stopped reminding riders why they mattered. The American market rewards emotion as much as function. Harley-Davidson sells pride, Honda sells peace of mind, Kawasaki sells adrenaline, Suzuki used to sell trust. But in a marketplace obsessed with branding and technology, that old-school honesty doesn't make headlines anymore. Riders don't gather around Suzuki's latest releases with the same curiosity they once did. For older riders, that invisibility stings. They remember the GS series screaming through open roads, the Boulevard Cruisers pulling strong under highway lights, and the DR dual sports carrying riders across rough country without complaint. Those memories mean something. They speak to a time when Suzuki represented the backbone of motorcycling, solid, unpretentious, and proud. But nostalgia alone cannot carry a brand through a market that now values lifestyle as much as mechanics. Suzuki's challenge isn't capability, it's conviction. The bikes still perform, but the company no longer tells a story that captures hearts. Without that story, new generations of riders pass by, unaware of what the name once meant. Meanwhile, older riders, who once swore by the brand, have shifted to machines with more comfort, more support, and more identity. If Suzuki hopes to survive in America, it needs to remember who it is. It must stand for something again: honest power, working-class dependability, and simple joy in the ride. Because once a name like Suzuki stops inspiring trust, it becomes just another logo on a dealer floor. And in a collapsing market, the quiet brands are the first to disappear. If you still believe the open road deserves honesty, not headlines, then subscribe right now. Stay part of the riders who refuse to forget what freedom feels like. Because the next chapters will reveal what's really coming for America's motorcycle future. Number 3. Indian motorcycle. For over a century, the name Indian has been carved into the backbone of American motorcycling. Long before chrome and infotainment systems, it stood for grit, innovation, and pride. It was the bike that rode beside soldiers, led parades, and filled Main Street with thunder, long before most brands even existed. Indian was never just another motorcycle. It was a symbol of the country itself. But in 2025, that symbol is fading once more, caught in the same corporate storm that's eroding the soul of nearly every great name in American steel. When Polaris resurrected Indian over a decade ago, the comeback felt like a rebirth. The brand promised a return to American craftsmanship, heart-pounding torque, and timeless style. Riders who had grown tired of Harley's corporate polish saw Indian as a return to authenticity. For a while, it worked. The bikes were bold, the styling powerful, and the sound unmistakable. Indian was no longer a ghost from the past. It was a genuine rival. But a revival is only as strong as its roots, and lately, those roots have begun to crack. The American motorcycle market has shifted beneath Indian's wheels. Riders are older, cautious, and less willing to gamble on high-dollar touring bikes. Younger generations don't feel the same attachment to the heritage names that once defined the road. They're not filling showrooms or swapping stories at rallies. They're scrolling through screens, comparing prices, and chasing practicality. For a brand built on history and identity, that's a dangerous trend. Indian sells legacy in a market that now demands technology. The deeper wound runs through the brand's purpose. Indian once carried the spirit of rebellion, the feeling that you were part of something older and greater. But in the past few years, the company's message has blurred. Its marketing leans corporate, its models overlap, and the once distinct voice of the brand feels diluted. Riders who once cheered its return now talk about high maintenance costs, dealership struggles, and resale drops. It isn't anger, they sound disappointed, like watching a friend lose his way. Yet Indian still builds some of the most soulful motorcycles on the road. But it's not enough to simply build a beautiful bike. In America, a motorcycle has to carry emotion, memory, and pride, and it has to feel like it belongs to the rider, not the boardroom. Indian's challenge now is to reclaim that sense of ownership. If it fails to reconnect with the riders who still believe in what it once represented, the brand risks fading again into the same cycle it barely escaped decades ago, revered but no longer relevant. Indian motorcycle has the heart, the tools, and the legacy to rise again. But survival now depends on whether it remembers what made it great, building machines not just for the road, but for the rider's soul. Number 2, Kawasaki. Kawasaki has always been the brand that lived on the edge. The green flash in the rearview mirror, the roar that made your chest tighten before you even saw the bike. It was never about playing it safe. From the day it entered the American market, Kawasaki built machines that challenged limits and expectations. The brand didn't just compete, it dominated. The name alone once meant raw speed, power, and a touch of danger. But in 2025, the spirit that made Kawasaki a legend is struggling to keep its fire alive in a world that has grown quieter, softer, and less daring. To the riders who grew up in the 70s and 80s, Kawasaki was the badge of rebellion. It was the company that threw caution to the wind, dropping bikes like the H2 two-stroke triple and the KZ900, machines that didn't care about rules or refinement. Later, the Ninja line turned every teenager's dream into asphalt reality. Even Harley loyalists respected Kawasaki's nerve. It was a company that took risks, broke molds, and stood proudly apart. That edge, that wild streak, built a loyal following that lasted for decades. But the motorcycle market has changed, and the kind of aggression that once defined Kawasaki now feels out of step with a cautious, comfort-driven generation. Today, Kawasaki finds itself caught between its legacy and the modern rider's expectations. Its machines remain brilliant fast, precise, beautifully engineered, but they no longer carry the same cultural weight. In a time when most buyers value touring comfort or nostalgic design, Kawasaki's focus on pure performance appeals to fewer Americans each year. The older riders who once lived for adrenaline are slowing down, and the younger riders who might replace them aren't buying big sport bikes, they're buying experiences, not engines. That leaves Kawasaki's signature identity, a mix of danger and excellence, adrift in a sea of moderation. The company has tried to adapt. The Vulcan cruisers nod to the Harley crowd, while the Versys and Concours cater to long-distance riders. But those efforts, though capable, have never captured the emotional loyalty that Harley, Indian, or even Honda command. Kawasaki's marketing feels more like engineering notes than storytelling. Riders respect the bikes, but they don't feel attached to the brand the way they once did. The fire that once drew people to the green banner has cooled into quiet admiration rather than passion. For the generation that remembers the smell of two-stroke oil and the rumble of straight pipes, Kawasaki will always stand for something fierce and proud. It represents an era when riders weren't afraid to push harder, go faster, or take risks for the thrill of it. That kind of spirit built legends. But in 2025, the roads feel different. Regulations, aging demographics, and the rise of technology-driven machines have dulled the roar that once defined the company. Kawasaki's survival isn't about horsepower anymore, it's about heart. The brand must remind riders what it once taught them, that freedom isn't quiet, comfort isn't everything, and courage belongs on two wheels. If it forgets that truth, it risks fading into polite history. A brand remembered for power, but lost to time. Number 1. Harley-Davidson. For more than 120 years, Harley-Davidson has been the beating heart of American motorcycling. It is the sound of a nation on two wheels, the gleam of chrome under sunlight, and the slow, steady rhythm of freedom itself. The name carries weight earned mile by mile, decade after decade, by riders who believed that owning a Harley wasn't about transportation. It was about identity. But in 2025, the most iconic motorcycle brand in America faces a truth it can no longer outrun. The road ahead is uncertain, and the roar that once defined rebellion now echoes with doubt. For generations, Harley symbolized power, pride, and brotherhood. Its riders were steelworkers, veterans, and mechanics, the backbone of America. They didn't buy Harleys for luxury. They bought them because the machines felt alive. The rumble of the engine, the vibration through the bars, the smell of oil and exhaust. Those sensations became sacred. But time has shifted the landscape. The men who built that legacy are aging, and the world around them has moved toward convenience, technology, and quiet efficiency. In that race for relevance, Harley has started to lose the one thing that made it untouchable, its soul. The company's leadership has spent the last few years trying to redefine what Harley means. They've chased younger audiences, changed marketing tones, and even restructured production. Yet every move seems to distance the brand further from its roots. The old-school riders, who kept Harley alive through every downturn, are left wondering whether the company still understands them. The bikes have become sleeker, lighter, more electronic, but in the process, They've lost the grit that made every mile feel earned. Harley once represented rebellion. Now, too often, it represents hesitation. Harley's struggle isn't just age or economics, it's culture. Once a brotherhood built on belonging and passion, it's now a product of exclusivity. Yet no name holds such power. It's written in music, film, and memory. Riders still nod in respect. The bond remains unbroken, waiting for Harley to remember its soul. If Harley wants to survive the next decade, it must look backward before it moves forward. It must remember the raw, unfiltered connection between rider and road that made it more than a motorcycle company, it made it a movement. Because if that spark fades, no technology, no rebranding, and no corporate plan will ever bring it back. Harley-Davidson doesn't need reinvention. It needs reconnection with its past, with its people, and with the very idea that freedom still rides on two wheels. The truth is, the collapse of America's motorcycle market isn't just about sales. It's about who we've become as riders. The bikes may change, but that feeling when the throttle opens, that never dies. If you made it this far, you're part of the few who still care about the soul of the ride. So tell me in the comments, what year was your first bike? And do you think these brands can bounce back? Hit that like button if you still believe in real steel, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.